It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
That are being implemented across Sydney, we are seeing that developers will be incorporating a much wider mix, so a lot more one bedroom plus studies and two bedrooms that will naturally appeal to those first home buyers.
And that is Tim Abbott in Sydney on the Real Estate Breakfast as we connect you to what is going on in your local area all over Australia. And of course, we do it every morning, 7 days a week. And if you have a real estate story to share with us, let us know by emailing us. We'd love to hear from you. And Melanie in Clayfield in Brisbane, good morning to you. Thank you for writing in. Busy bee, you're saving for your deposit with your partner Damien, hoping to buy in Clayfield later this year. You heard us talking recently about an extended family member, and it was an auntie that gifted a couple $100,000. The same thing happened to you. Your auntie gifted you $50,000. And that has made it possible for you to get into the housing market, or in this case, into the unit market, a whole lot earlier. Fantastic. And let us know how that goes. If you're curious about Clayfield in Brisbane for the unit market, the median is hovering around that $663,000 mark. Over the last 12 months, boy, that is growing 20.5%. And the population there in Clayfield around 11,000 people. If you'd like to let us know your real estate journey, whatever it might be, our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. And right now, it is time for another property tip. Recently, we were in Hamilton in NZ talking to Mark there, an award-winning auctioneer. And Mark, you've got a auction property tip for us this morning.
Sure do, Craig. This is my one for going to an auction that you think is going to be competitive with lots of competing registered interest. My idea, stand in a prominent position, eyeball the auctioneer and don't give him even numbers. Dictate the numbers. I'd be going 917,500, 963.5, add 17, add 19, and just see what you get at the end of it, because I think your competition look and go, what's going on here? And you can just throw them off and get that little bit of ascendancy, which might just give you the edge.
Have you been in the crowd watching an auctioneer dealing with that and seeing the angst on their face?
Absolutely, because in New Zealand, we often get asked to bid for a buyer, and when we know the auctioneer, we can go and have a bit of fun with them. So we're never too tough on them. But once there was one of my female colleagues calling an auction, and I said, Lisa, would you be comfortable with me starting at 11/16 of a million? Because we learn the sixteenths as part of our training. And she said, thanks for the heads up. Yep, go for it.
It is a Tuesday morning, June the 24th, as we catch up with Tim Abbott, a director from Ray White in Sydney on the lower North Shore. And good morning to you, Tim. Welcome into the Real Estate Breakfast. First off, what has been surprising you in the 2025 year of real estate there in the lower North Shore?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. We've seen a few trends over the last probably 6 to 12 months with demand for larger apartments, and particularly with families moving out from a family house, downsizing and wanting large 3 bedrooms and 4 bedrooms. We've never really had a big market for this, but it's quite surprising that as people get older, might have children at university coming and going, or they have guests coming to stay with them regularly. There's actually quite a demand for large 3 bedrooms and 4 bedroom apartments, which is a new trend that we're seeing, but it's becoming quite popular. I think that's largely because there are downsizers. There's also younger families that just don't have time for the maintenance and the quarter-acre block that everyone sort of aspired to. Busy professionals often like to have the size, but not the maintenance that goes along with a house of that sort of size. So it's an interesting trend that we're seeing, and I think the developers are responding to it. They're building larger 3 bedrooms with big living spaces, large master bedrooms, and incorporating the 4 bedrooms, which have been quite popular in a project we've recently done in Willoughby.
Yes, as Australian house prices rise, the dream home, it seems, is being reimagined. As you say, more spacious apartments over white picket fenced suburbia. And that UNSW study does show what you're highlighting, and that is families, downsizers and professionals, they are embracing these 3-bedders and even 4-bedroom apartments that do blend community with privacy. Developments in Sydney are offering expansive layouts, it would have to be said, and even the heritage properties, they're not missing out on the action. They seem to have acquired these new inspired designs. So quite a change there going on at your end, Tim.
Yeah. No, it's interesting how it all changes. It really is fascinating, and the different buyer types. And what's really encouraging is, as agents, we talk to people day in and day out. We give feedback to the developers, and the good thing is they're listening and incorporating it into the new developments. As you say, the fact of having a community within a building as well is an important point. We've got development in Willoughby of 150 apartments. They've broken those down into 5 smaller boutique blocks, lots of landscaping. And it really is resonating well with the purchasers who are moving in. It's just about complete. We've seen this with larger style townhouses across the lower North Shore as well. Back maybe 10 years ago, they were trying to build them as small as possible, but those days have gone. I think the developers are realising that this is a long-term stay for purchasers and they need the size and the comfort, and they're incorporating that into the development, which is great.
Yeah, the Master Builders Association of New South Wales did report a sharp rise in demand for these 3-bedroom apartments. Once a rarity, now up to 50% of new developments. So that really does paint the picture. You know, the unit market and these developers in Sydney, particularly where you are in the lower North Shore, I mean, so much has been going on post-COVID, and it just continues to sort of ramp up. I know that probably 2 years ago there were some developers that were just sitting on the fence, but there seems to be a bit more of a momentum push. Is that fair to say at the moment?
Yeah, that's right. It's interesting in this lower North Shore and across the Sydney area, there's been some recent zoning changes. The planning controls really didn't allow for a lot of new development across the lower North Shore and across Sydney. But recently the state government said we need more housing, and they've incorporated some pretty significant changes all across Sydney to get more medium density apartments and townhouses into the area. So all of a sudden we're seeing a lot more land opening up and a lot more activity. So the good news is, for purchasers, there's going to be a lot more choice, a lot more of this type of apartment living coming to really across all of the town centres across Sydney. So they've done it in such a way that anything within 800 square metres of a town centre and transport has been uplifted in density. And so we're starting to see those development sites transact, and another year or so they'll be out of the ground and be available for people to purchase. So it's a really changing environment here.
And we are talking to Tim Abbott there on the lower North Shore in Sydney. We'll come back with more after this.
We dive deep into topics like buying, selling, investing, and maximising your property's value. From mortgage advice to the latest property data and trending numbers. Your real estate journey starts here.
Well, Trump's decision to launch strikes on Iran has become the next major geopolitical shock that we always look out for in real estate. I mentioned this yesterday that the remainder of 2025 probably is going to be a little bit unstable on the global stage. And why this matters so much in real estate in Australia is the way that people will feel about any instability as the fallout continues. Now, we don't want the economy stalling or going backwards, and at the Bowser already we are going to be paying more for petrol to put into the car. So the next few weeks will reveal or the extent of the pain globally. Now, recently we talked about the government's ban on foreigners buying existing properties, and we spoke to Monica too, who is well positioned to talk about foreign buyers, especially from China, and asked her what has happened since the ban was introduced.
Okay, I want to give you a bit of insight, all your listeners. That ban is almost like ridiculous. So I did have a big interview with the Financial Review Summit, and I mentioned that since 2023, that's according to Financial Review, it's only 0.1% of these international buyers, and in New South Wales, 0.01% of these buyers who has got no visa, purely investment in Australia or in New South Wales. It doesn't really affect anything. So that rule is kind of ridiculous. Okay, for people who want to sell in the luxury market to Chinese, it doesn't affect at all.
Listen to expert perspectives with exclusive real estate conversations and supercharge your knowledge base with us.
And it's a Real Estate Tuesday, and we are in Sydney on the lower North Shore talking to Tim Abbott this morning. A lot of the first home buyers, Tim, they're moving out of Sydney, going into some of these regional areas. That story that I mentioned about Melanie there in Clayfield in Brisbane, obviously renting in Clayfield, likes Clayfield, wants to buy in Clayfield, and then had the auntie. Go, you aunties. That's the second email we've had. 50K. Gee, that is so significant for somebody saving to get into a property. Have you had those sorts of stories where you are? Might need to be a little bit more than 50K just to really push the envelope to help somebody, first home buyer, get in the market and stay in Sydney without moving out.
Yes, indeed. Often we have family members, as you've mentioned, help younger people get into the market. We've actually seen another trend as well where young professionals buying properties, having them as an investment for the first couple of years to start paying down some of the mortgage, and then they'll move into it after they've knocked a bit off the mortgage and saved a bit more money. But certainly there's family help across the board. The good thing as well is, as you said, with that statistic that 50% of the new developments have been 3 bedrooms, that's been largely pushed towards the affluent downsizer. With these new planning controls that are being implemented across Sydney, we are seeing that developers will be incorporating a much wider mix, so a lot more 1 bedrooms, 1 bedroom plus studies and 2 bedrooms. That will naturally appeal to those first home buyers trying to get into the property ladder. So it is a changing market completely here at the moment.
All right, Tim, we'll wrap it up there. Enjoy your Tuesday there on the lower North Shore in Sydney, and thanks again for coming on to the Real Estate Breakfast this morning.
Thanks very much for having me.
We are more than just a real estate podcast. We cover a multitude of subjects, including property data, current buyer-seller sentiment, and the mood of the market. Follow each week all of the main talking points and know your property.
Migrated from the eastern suburbs to the inner west, and you saw a sharp rise there in prices, and now that is sort of migrating down to the St George area and to the Sutherland Shire and the metro, etc. Things are getting easier to get into the CBD if you have to.
Yeah, I want to get to this question about the agent dilemma. They go in trying to win a listing. The vendor, the owner, turns around and says, well, this is my sell price. The real estate agent says, well, that's not really what the market value is right now, but they say yes.
We're seeing more and more properties actually in our areas where it changes from agent to agent. So the first agent tries, market says no, the listing expires, and then the vendor moves on to the next agent. The agent should be informing the vendor, these are the comparable sales, this is what your property is worth, and this is how we can list it accordingly.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.